You're listening to Two Tall Guys Talking Sales, where today's episode tackles one of the hottest and riskiest topics in modern selling: artificial intelligence. Sean, Kevin, and guest John McLeod explore how AI can supercharge sales productivity while warning against tools that distort your messaging or damage your brand. You'll hear why training your AI tools with purpose is just as important as using them, and how clever prompt engineering can protect your company's value proposition. You won't want to miss this conversation if you're looking to boost efficiency without compromising authenticity.
Welcome back to Two Tall Guys Talking Sales. This is Sean O'Shaughnessy, and we are lucky to have John McLeod out of Chicago, who is also a fractional VP of sales, just like Kevin and I. And he's been doing this a little longer than Kevin and I have been doing it. So lots of experience, lots of knowledge on how to run sales organizations, make small businesses successful, make salespeople successful. John's got a lot of experience in that area. And today we're going to talk about the fun thing in life, the chasing the new shiny object. It's the salesperson that called you up as a business owner or a salesperson. And he said, man, I have this new greatest tool that if you adopt this tool, you will get more leads than you can do. We're going to close all those leads for you. All you have to do is figure out how to cash the commission checks. We've all had the pitch. We've all heard it over and over again. And John's going to help us understand a little bit about how to deal with that and a good strategy for that and how to make this successful. John, welcome to Two Tall Guys Talking Sales.
Great. Thank you for having me, Sean and Kevin. It's a pleasure to be with you all and our combined experiences and knowledge. And hopefully I can share a couple insights around this topic of the shiny object of AI in our sales environments today, and how maybe to look at it from the perspective of risk and reward, because it comes with both and you need to assess that. But I'm looking forward to diving in with you and sharing some great information.
Great. So I have a statement. I'm very interested in hearing your thoughts on this, and we can take it from this point on. I like to tell salespeople that have not used AI much in their lives yet. I said, look, it is a new productivity tool that's been entered into the market. And no, you're not going to lose your job to artificial intelligence, but you might lose your job to another salesperson using artificial intelligence to make themselves more productive. Thoughts on that? How do you feel about that?
I agree wholeheartedly. And I think productivity is one thing. Productivity is sometimes an individual metric, right? It's like, how can I be better, faster, more impactful, and so on. I think there's also within a larger organization in total, which is efficiency, because it's connected tissue. It's not just an individual's world that we're talking about here. But for salespeople, yes, there are lots of shiny objects out there today, and they're good. I'm not here to debate the good and the bad of all the shiny objects that are available to sellers out there. But I do think sellers need to have some caution statements in their head as they think about how they're adapting AI. I think the decision makers who decide to put these tools into their seller toolkits need to think at an even broader scale as well on the whole risk reward of this potential tool. My biggest example that helps people be more productive is that tool changing who we are as an organization. Does it sync with our true value, what it is we provide organizations? And I'm not talking about the tool, I'm talking about the outcome. What can my buyer gain as an outcome from my solution or my engagement with them to lead them down that path? So the AI tool can help bring you efficiency for sure. So look at the typical seller that maybe is asked to go find a new client. There's basically 3 jobs they want to do to identify the ideal client to chase. And it starts with research, and that might be researching relative companies, researching relative individual buyer personas in these companies. And there are a lot of AI tools that help you with that. Then it could be, okay, what tools or efficiency can I gain in qualifying the true intent and viability of a prospect? So that's the second phase. And the third might be, okay, how do I do outreach in an efficient way, potentially using an AI tool to do that? Now, there's probably 12 tools within those 3 contexts that I can think of right off the top of my head. But here's the thing to think about, both organizationally and individually. Organizationally is, if I'm providing these tools to my sellers, will they do no harm? What does that mean? It could be, do these tools put an engagement and experience out there that is uncomfortable for my ideal client to even interact with? Number one. Number two, if the AI tool is responsible in some part for messaging, is that message congruent to my value proposition, my solution value that I provide to clients, and the outcome matching that it has to what the client is trying to achieve? Because obviously AI tools are meant to be trained, and they're meant to be expanded in such a way that they've learned from you what is the core messaging value that you want to represent. And so there's a lot of talk about how to train in generative AI, how to train that generative AI tool, whether it's ChatGPT or some of the others, to be knowledgeable enough so that they do no harm to what the messaging is that's going out to this person you're trying to engage with. So back to the original premise here, there are individual productivity gains that they would like to have. I'd like to be making more calls a day, and I'd like to be getting more conversions happening from curiosity to interest and entering in my pipeline. But there are also efficiency issues that the organization needs to look at so that they have a highly integrated sales process with other parts of the organization. Where does the other parts of the organization pick up on what these tools are providing us? So for instance, in some sales organizations, there's a concept of a business development rep or sales development rep that handles the appointment setting or maybe the first discovery call. And then it gets transferred or translated into a client manager or AE or that type of role to really run the entire sales process. Well, how's the efficiency of using that tool in its handoff capability? Where's the productivity going to happen for the next person that enters into the dialogue or the engagement with that client? Those are things to think about before you think about what tool and what shiny object you want to chase to achieve the success you want.
Let me jump in on that because that's a really interesting melting pot for not just efficiencies, but I think you were really the growth edge when you said risk.
Mm-hmm.
So the growth edge of AI is really what can we do more within our organizations, but how do you start talking to business owners and VPs of sales who are really excited about a product, maybe an add-in that enriches data in your CRM? How do you unpack that introduces to the organization when you attach an outside firm and tell them your ICP persona and they start connecting to it? Now they've got an enriched data set and a target data set if you ever decide to leave.
Right. I think there's a couple things to think about, and I've been trying to get personally involved in looking at some of the concepts around ethical AI and the ethical AI usage scenarios. And when you're not in the conversation and you're expecting a shiny object tool to have that engagement, one of the things is on the risk side is, does that tool actually support the understanding of that person it's interacting with about what your true value is? And if that's not clear, you have to make that clear. There's also the risk that if your AI processes or if your sales process, and I'm speaking primarily top of the funnel here, is to convert somebody to further interest, is in leading that person to the right and appropriate path to learn more in a productive go forward way. And so old school ways, when somebody went on a website and said, contact us. Okay, great. But is your call to action, which should be a familiar term to sales leaders out there today, is your call to action a meaningful result of what this AI tool helped develop for you? So are you pointing them into a productive place to continue the conversation? Or are you sending them off into never land? And oh, God forbid, you don't have any follow-up at all. There is no way to continue the interaction and the engagement. So those are a few risks to concern, but I think the biggest one is in all the engagement tools that are out there is the biggest risk is, are they in fact supporting you? You make a distinctive value proposition and holding true to that.
So let's pull on that yarn a little bit because we could get lost in a lot of the really, really high thinking around what is AI? How could it benefit my business? But let's take it down to the practical VP of sales and business owner level. When you introduce AI and efficiency, that naturally raises the bar of expectation for performance. How are you talking about that with your clients? Now, I think it's probably a robust discussion for not only how to think about where you're trying to go, but what is the new normal when you get there?
Yeah, a lot to unpack with that question, but I think that comes a little bit into the integration world. If you are doing that research component leading to an engagement, and if you are in fact training your generative AI tool, ChatGPT or other, to find you that best ideal client and start an engagement with you, you have to become an expert on how to frame your training and your prompt of that tool. You have to learn and get smart about that. Now, this conversation is too short for us to dive into all of that concept, but you have to invest the time and energy to get it right, to do A/B testing, to really frame that model to not only get the best result for you, but do it in a way that puts your value and your value proposition and so on out there in the most impactful way it can. So one of those areas is the tool itself. And we all started with this when we first got our free ChatGPT license a couple of years ago. We just started asking it questions, right? Remember, how you ask a question, how you frame it, how you educate, how you set the tone, how you describe certain elements that need to be in that query, if you will, make it much smarter and much more valuable to you. So I would say the biggest risk aversion strategy to have for an individual is get smart in the tool. Understand that deploying the tool without enablement, without real guidance, without real training in some regard, can be very dangerous.
I think you're absolutely right on that. And in fact, and I know that there's been a lot of concern about security, and I know that Kevin just kind of alluded to this, but putting your client's data into a tool, depending on your business, you may have access to very confidential information about your client, about your customer. And so you got to be really careful of that. Now, if you want to stick the annual report for your customer into the tool and tell it, hey, give me the 5 things that the CEO thinks are important that I should address in my efforts to close a Fortune 500 company, that's public information. That annual report's probably already in the tool, in its database. However, if it's some confidential information you're working on, be really careful. You really don't want to be the leak, and you probably had to sign an NDA as a vendor. So just be very careful. And I have taken us almost to the end of our time here. And John, we told you when we started that 15 minutes just flies by and we just can't talk fast enough. So do us a favor. There's probably a bunch of people out there that are like, what John just said sounded really cool, but I probably have 1,000 questions to ask John. So if they wanted to reach out and just have a conversation with you on this subject, how would they get a hold of you? What's your best way of communicating to people? And are you even interested?
Oh, no, absolutely. I'd love to help in any way I can. The best way to get in touch with me and find out more about me, as well as see my contact info, my LinkedIn profile, John McLeod, spelled McLeod. My company is called Sales Growth Solutions, and I help small and mid-sized businesses around the U.S. answer the simple question, how do I build repeatability and predictability into my revenue engine? And so that's the best way to find me. And I'm happy to take any and all questions or have just other conversations with anybody on an interesting topic in the sales environment.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that. And thank you for being on our podcast. Thank you for being our guest. We are working towards our 150th episode. We're not quite there yet. So we're working our way there. So we'll have a little bit of a whatever kind of centennial party that is when that happens. But thank you very much for being our guest. We really do appreciate it. You'll find, for those people that are listening, you'll find that the show notes will have all this information. You'll be able to reach out to John. Wealth of knowledge, wealth of information here. So read the show notes. And thank you very much, John, for taking the time to be on.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Kevin. Enjoyed it.
What a powerful episode of Two Tall Guys Talking Sales. Today's conversation with John McLeod brought sharp insight into the balance between innovation and discipline in sales leadership. One standout moment was John's breakdown of the 3 essential AI use cases: research, qualification, and outreach, and how each stage demands careful alignment with your company's true value proposition. It was a smart reminder that sales success doesn't come from automation alone, but from integration with clear messaging and consistent processes. We also heard a crucial takeaway worth acting on today. Train your AI tools with intention. Rushing to deploy untrained generative AI might save time, but could cost you trust and brand integrity in the long run. Take 15 minutes today to review your prompts and outputs. Are they truly reflecting your company's voice and values? If not, now is the time to fix it before that outreach goes out the door. And remember, if you ever need help improving your sales team, fine-tuning your sales management strategy, or boosting your revenue generation, Sean and Kevin are ready to help. Their contact info is in the show notes, along with a quick sales assessment that can help you determine if your team is truly operating at its best. If this episode gave you a new perspective, subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss another conversation packed with actionable insight. Until next Tuesday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time, happy selling.